Out of nothing, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. This was the beginning, the primordial act, the culmination of which was the creation of human life. The spirit that God breathed into his creation was life itself, not only in its manifest beauty and delight, but also in its potentialities. The goodness of his creation, then, was anything but inert. It was dynamic, vibrant, and full of latent promise. But what of that vitality and promise? Then the Lord God took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to cultivate it and keep it. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. In the Hebrew derivations, the key verbs are ahad and shamar. The former can be translated as work, nurture, sustain, and husband. The latter means to safeguard, preserve, care for, and protect. These are active verbs that convey God's intention that human beings both develop and cherish the world in ways that meet human needs and bring glory and honor to Him. In this creative labor, we mirror God's own generative act, and thus reflect our very nature as ones made in His likeness. In the Christian view, then, human beings are, by divine intent and their very nature, world makers. For Christian believers, an obligation accompanies God's gift of life, an obligation by no means negated by human sin, man's rebellion against God. Indeed, it was reaffirmed in God's covenant with Noah, Genesis chapter 9, and then with Abraham, Genesis chapter 12 through 17, and then with Moses, Exodus chapter 19, and then finally with Jesus Christ, the last Adam, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 45. The firstborn of the new creation, Romans chapter 8, verse 24, Ephesians chapter 1, verse 20. People fulfill their individual and collective destiny in the art, music, literature, commerce, law, and scholarship they cultivate, the relationships they build, and in the institutions they develop, the families, churches, associations, and communities they live in and sustain, as they reflect the good of God and His designs for flourishing. To be sure, active renunciation of the world can be found from time to time in various places and traditions. Even today, there are some who hold to a lifeboat theology, seeing the world as a sinking ship on its way to judgment and hell. In this view, the goal of the Christian is to rescue as many as possible on the lifeboat of salvation. There are also some who see their faith merely as a coping strategy for dealing with the complexities and difficulties of life. As a rule, though, indifference toward the world is quite rare in the history of God's people. The passion to engage the world, to shape it, and finally change it for the better, would seem to be an enduring mark of Christians on the world in which they live. To be Christian is to be obliged to engage the world, pursuing God's restorative purposes over all of life, individual and corporate, public and private. This is the mandate of creation.